Welcome back on the AM show. Now, the 2024 budget has finally been accepted after all the wrangling in Parliament. It has seen the light of day, 136 on the minority or opposing side, 138 on the majority side, giving that some life. Of course, we know that the Member of Parliament for Asin South, James Jachikwason, actually couldn't make it there on medical grounds. But that is how the cookie crumbled in Parliament. The question is, what is the way forward? I've listened to Murtala Mohammed, I've listened to Kojo Ponkroma, I've listened to other people speak to the issues and the way forward. But joining us for a conversation on this, about what this means for Ghana, what we can expect in the coming days, weeks and months, Dr. Sairam Kawo. He is a senior lecturer, UCC School of Business, together with Raphael Kuma, NPP parliamentary candidate-elect in Bole Bamboy. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you. I think we may have lost Raphael Kuma on the line, but we still have Dr. Kawo. Good morning, Doc.
Good morning, my brother. How are you?
I am well. I hope you are too.
I'm doing good by God's grace.
We thank God. What do you make, straight to it, what do you make of the 2024 budget, even before we talk about its approval? What do you make of the budget in itself, in terms of policy, in terms of what it would mean for our economy?
Okay, thank you very much. When you look at the budget, or before the reading of the budget, we have gone to IMF. We had the IMF agreement, and we have seen the conditionalities in the agreement. And so I was expecting that those things would feature in the budget. And when the budget was read, it was a replica of what the IMF agreement had stated. And so it was a reflection of what was there. The IMF agreement was hinged on taxation, making sure that we raise enough domestic revenue for our country. And so that came up, and we have seen some new taxes that have been proposed. And during the appropriation, which will be done by 22nd December, before Parliament rise up, those things will all be approved and adjustments will be done. And so it is only in a situation that will tell us that we are in difficult times, and we all have to prepare for the tougher battle ahead of all of us. We also have the IMF agreement hinging on making sure that we maintain stable macroeconomic stability, making sure that inflation and exchange rate and the rest are controlled, and then they are manageable so that the citizens can be okay. We've seen an improvement in social interventions, and all have reflected in the budget. Unfortunately for us, the approval process have been mandated with some form of chaotic behavior from our members of parliament, which is not too good for us. But that will be a debate for another time.
I see. Let's now get into, I think we've lost Raphael Kuma. When he reconnects with us, we'll try. Raphael, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I think we lost you a short while ago. Good to have you join the conversation, Mr. Kuma. What would be your reflection? I just wanted a bit of a take on the 2024 budget, looking at the different angles of conversations we've had in terms of our economic life. What do you make of the budget, briefly, before we get into what happened yesterday?
Okay, so thank you very much for the opportunity, and a very good morning to your cherished listeners. So, basically, the budget is a reflection of the current situation we have in Ghana. It's obvious that the country has challenges. Even amidst our challenges, the government is trying so hard to make it work. Some 2-3 key takeaways I think on the budget was emphasis on infrastructure, emphasis on agriculture, and emphasis on the trade. Agriculture, as we speak, employs about 38.2% of the workforce in Ghana. So when the government is trying to make all efforts to make sure that at least we have this, whatever we require to push our agriculture industry further, I think it should be a plus. But of course, one thing I think I want to comment on is the fact that it looks as if every time there's a budget, there's always an entrenched position by both the majority and the minority. If you look at the voting pattern yesterday, the majority had 138 and the minority had 136. So are we to imply that everything that was in the budget was supposed to be rejected by the minority? Is that the case? I mean, I think that...
And you could say same for the majority as well.
Yes,
that
exactly.
was it.
So
Was it to say that everything that was in there was so good, excellent, that all of them had to go? I think it's a partisan problem we have, but there are some issues. For example, the tax waivers for certain persons deemed to be tied to the higher echelons of our political life, among others that are to be debated. And I heard Kojo Oponkroma say that as and when there are such issues, they feel they ought to be debated, yes, they will come on board. But in the end, it will have to do with the numbers.
Sure, that I very much agree with you. So I think that it's a national call. We need to look at this with more or less in a nationalistic perspective, other than the partisan perspective. Of course, we are politicians, and we are here to serve the interests of our people. But the fact that we want to serve the interests of our people doesn't mean that we should be too partisan, even though we ride on the vehicles of partisanship. I think we should learn from other European and foreign countries where, I mean, they are sometimes able to come to terms and then put the national interest ahead of any other interest. So for me, generally, the budget is a reflection of the current status of Ghana. Some taxes have been introduced. The restriction of some importation or restriction on importation of certain materials. But of course, we need to also look at that one carefully. If you are restricting certain items from being imported, then we need to also be able to access our capacity to produce those locally and call for a broader stakeholder engagement so that we can get a buy-in of all other factors or all other players that matter. When we do this, I'm sure we should be able to have a very successful implementation. So, by and large, this time I see on that.
All right. Raphael, hold for me. Let me bring back Dr. Kawo. So yesterday, finally, the budget that was supposed to have been approved on November the 29th, and yet the Parliamentary Service told us it had not been approved, finally received its stamp of approval. But moving forward, if you look at the process of approval, what do you make of it? I think Raphael raised a point about the fact that all those in the minority, like we've seen in recent times, rejected it, all those in the majority accepted it. But if we were looking at the real facts of the budget, what do you think we should have seen?
We thank you very much. The process of the approval of the budget has not been very smooth. And this has been something that has been happening over the years. And we pray that Parliament will come to the reality and put Ghanaians first when it comes to the budget approval. We have seen the entrenched positions that have been taken by both sides, and that sends a wrong signal to the market. I should be expecting that there will be some places where the House will agree on certain issues and disagree on some of them when it comes in. The approval has given way for them to now go into the appropriation of the ministries, agencies, and departments, and that is where they will do some adjustments before it finally comes out. I would have wished that those things were done before this final approval is done. And so going forward, these processes by which we approve the appointment of ministers and whatever that is being done in Parliament, we try as much as possible to remove the politics out of it. As the colleague on the line just stated, that we should learn from other countries and say that, yes, this is good for us, that is not good for us, so that we will be able to save the country some amount of money when we are going forward. Some taxes that have been introduced right now, especially the emission tax, and that every person owning a motorcycle, a car, a tricycle, and all those things, you pay 100 Ghana cedis every year, and all those. It's a way of raising some amount of money, but is it necessary? Is it not likened to the luxury vehicle tax that we have seen in the past? Those who are passing it today, they are not going to be in parliament forever. The table will turn, and tomorrow they will have the same thing. Are they going to say the same things? And so when we are pushing the law, we are pushing the taxes. We need to also look at the ordinary Ghanaian on the streets, the businesses that are operating. If we inundate them with a lot of taxes in the system, how would they be able to sustain, grow their businesses, pay the taxes, so that the cost of production will be lower, prices will be lower on the market? Those are the things that we need to address. And so going forward, I would call on the parliamentarians that they should be decorum when it comes to the budget approval, taking entrenched positions, sometimes when they know that some of the things are not good for the country, when they know that the policies that they want to implement are not so much okay. Why is it that the restrictions that the Minister of Trade was trying to push in Parliament did not appear in the budget if we are really planning? At that point in time, all of them agreed that it is something that they have to take off. That is the kind of position we need to look at. We've not had any systems in place. Production, if we should take rice, for example, we are not producing up to about 5% of what we consume in the country, and you want to restrict.
Do you mean up to 50% or up to 5% when it comes to rice?
I'm not sure we produce up to 5% of the rice we consume in Ghana.
Well, statistically, if you look at the production, at least from what the metrics we have, if you look at sometime in maybe around 2010, 2012, we're producing about 450,000 metric tons. The consumption was much higher. If you look at now, we're somewhere around 800,000 metric tons or less, and the consumption is upwards of 1.55 million metric tons. So we have some rice production. It is in other areas like poultry where we are producing very little, maybe about 10%, and those are pretty problematic.
Yeah, so when you even look at the statistics, I'm not saying that we don't have rice production, but if you compare it with the consumption and what we bring into the country, then it becomes an issue. That is where we need to have pragmatic policies communicated with stakeholders involvement, government subsidies to these particular areas in terms of mechanizing the agricultural sector. That will make sure that the production that is done is lower, and that will increase the consumption that we are getting in our country. As we improve, then we can come out with restrictions on it. And let us remember that we are not an island. We are dependent on other countries for other things that we import. As soon as you try to pose restrictions on importation of certain items from some countries, some of these countries may retaliate by imposing sanctions on us. And if they retaliate in terms of trade, in terms of investment, export and import, then we are going to be at the suffering end. And what we are going to do is that you are going to aggravate the situation in your country where people are going to increase prices at random. And you create some monopolies and conglomerates for some individuals who will be richer at the expense of the ordinary Ghanaian. And that is where we need to be looking at, so that we coordinate all our budgeting processes. And once we coordinate the budgeting processes, let the citizens accept the budget. Let the implementers accept the budget. Then it becomes a working budget. Right. It's not a budget for a particular political party or a leader. It is the budget for Ghanaians. And for that budget to be successful, we must all buy into that particular budget.
I get that point you're saying about buying into it. Raphael, when you look at the buy-in, of course, you've lost the minority on this matter. But when you look at the buy-in, there are many matters to look at. In fact, yesterday I had your colleague on the NDC side, who is in Parliament in Bolibamboy, Yusuf Suleimana, whom you're going to be competing against in the 2024 elections. But there's this talk about an eco-tax of about 100 Ghana cedis per person, okay? Then there's the COVID-19 levy. Just today, curiously, I was going by someone's, desk, and the person said, so why are we still paying, this COVID-19 levy? I don't know anywhere else in the world where this is happening. The business community has complained about taxes ad nauseum. What do you make about those components still in our budget, or at least on our tax handles, before we get into the LI that Dr. Seyram Kawa has been speaking of?
Like I said earlier on, I believe strongly that we need to...
Raphael, I can't hear you well. I'm struggling to hear you. Maybe if you could speak a bit louder or reposition yourself.
Okay. Evan, am I saying now?
The name is Benjamin, by the way. Please go ahead.
Sorry, Benjamin. Yes. So, like I was saying, I think we have to look at our approach to approving the country's budget. When the minority have issues with certain portions of the budget, I think that all of these things should be tabled before the final stage of the approval. The MPC government is a very listening government. So instead of them saying that let's reject the entire budget as a whole, they should be able to identify certain key components of the budget that they are not in agreement with. And I'm sure both sides will come together and then work things out. So on the issue of the COVID-19 component, I'm sure if the side had been able to raise this, I'm sure the government would have been able to come to terms with certain decisions on that matter. So I think we need to call for a holistic engagement on how we approve our budget as a country. It's not everything that we must reject, and it's not also everything that we must also accept. So when we approach it from this perspective, I'm very sure that everybody will have a stake, or everybody's stake would be recognized and then implemented. That is what I think we should be doing at this point as a nation. Other than getting the entire budget, we should have certain portions that we need to meet one another halfway and go with it. I'm sure we'll do this. We should be able to get a buy-in of every other person. Of course, this issue...
But you don't just get a buy-in based on, out of vacuum. I mentioned specifically this eco-tax that has been bandied about, where everyone is supposed to pay a certain amount of money. People are already in the ground. Have you read the reports, the Ghana Statistical Service, the World Bank, among others, talking about, even on the back of the last few years, how many more people have fallen into the poverty net or poverty trap? Now, you have a COVID-19 levy. We are the only country I know, unless you want to contradict that has this kind of levy. The business community is complaining about taxes. You don't just get a buy-in because there's a buy-in, or you want a buy-in. You must get a buy-in based on certain premises. Do we have that? That's the question.
So the point again here is that we are all aware of the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, and again, the challenges posed
COVID-19 is long gone. It has been declared no longer a world pandemic situation.
I agree with you on that score, but the effects of COVID-19 are so persistent. If you and I were to that, the effects of that pandemic is so with us here. If you would recall, we had free water, free electricity, and other things were donated. All of these things were paid with money. And obviously, there's a need for us to be able to reimburse wherever we got this money from. So, of course, all of us are not happy with paying taxes. But for us to develop as a country, we must pay taxes. There's no country that can develop without paying taxes. But, like I said, it calls for broader stakeholder engagement on the kind of taxes or on the whatever term that has to do with taxes. And we can never develop without taxes. So, I mean, this issue of COVID-19 put in tax. I agree with you that there's a need for broader stakeholder engagement to see which other way that would better for us to put it, other than maybe living in as COVID maybe or something else. So, yes, COVID is gone, but we still have the effects of COVID living with us here in this country. Where do you think that we're getting the benefits, the funds to get the water from, electricity from, PPE from, vaccines from? These are all things that we need to take into account. The party has been able to, the government has been able to provide the best of leadership during the times of the pandemic. And I believe that, and I strongly believe that the government deserves commendation and not condemnation. Of course, we have to also bear the consequences of what we have enjoyed in the past. And here we are with the issue of taxes. I believe that with broader stakeholder agreement and consultation, this has to be able to be resolved. Like I said, we don't have to reject the budget entirely, and we don't have to approve the budget entirely. The components that we don't agree with, both parties will be able to come together and deal with it. That's how we progress as a country. If you have two parties about everything, we still having this kind of back and forth conversation, which is not help us.
I have an interesting question for you, and it was brought up by Dr. Seyram Kawo. Everything you do must be woven into policy, and in this case, probably the most important, the budget statement. But you have this latest ally on restricting imports or banning imports, which didn't even feature in the 2024 budget. Yet you have seen the push up to the point where it has had to be withdrawn, and now the IMF is saying you can't even do that based on the terms and conditions of your agreement with us. What signal does that send to you? The fact that we're pushing an ally like this, which would impact the economy, and I'm sure you are well aware of what the implications would be, but at the same time, it wasn't even factored into the budget. Dr. Kawa made mention of that. How could that even happen?
So usually with these things, I strongly believe that the minister thought it well through that one of the easiest ways to centralization is being able to restrict some of these things so that we can rely on our local context. But, like I said, if you are doing this restriction, we need to also be able to assess our capacity as a country, but we need to be able to supply the needs of the people if we are restricting items. Honestly, I haven't seen any data anywhere that sort of suggests that this is the statistics we have in the country that will be able to support.
I didn't get that. You say you've not seen data anywhere that what?
Data anywhere that confirms that we have enough capacity to be able to supply the country's needs when we restrict these items. So, like I said,
I don't know why I'm struggling. Raphael, I'm sorry. I want to take you back. I'm struggling to hear what you're saying because then it would lead to the next questioning. If you could speak up for me, I'd appreciate it. You say there's no data to what effect?
I haven't seen any data that sort to suggest that when we restrict these items, the country, Ghana, would have enough to be able to supply the needs of its citizens when these items are restricted. So there's a need for further consultation in regard so that we don't even them in the first place for us to supply at the end of the day. And the issue of it being not treated in the budget, I'm sure these things are matters that the government, the ministers, the parliamentarians will be able to resolve at the appropriate time.
Hold for me. Let me bring in Dr. Kawo, who also on the back of this conversation. When we talk about that legislative instrument that has now been withdrawn, there has been a lot of talk about what the excesses of the minister could be, how he could abuse his powers. I have elaborated on the sections talking about the powers given to the minister time and again. But what do you make of that ally, especially from the economic standpoint, when it comes to restricting all of these items? Maybe I'll just pull up the details here so we can take a quick look at the different dynamics, just to situate the conversation. Let me just do that briefly. I'll get to that in just a little bit. So I believe there it should be. When you look at the data, okay, and what powers it gives the minister, I just want to reiterate. It talks about the fact that a person shall not import or cause to be imported into the country a selected strategic product without an import permit issued by the minister on the written recommendation of the Import Permit Committee. Then it also says a person shall not facilitate the importation of a selected strategic product or shipment of a selected strategic product into the country without an import permit issued by the minister on the written recommendation of the Permit Committee. Some people feel this will lead to brazen, wanton corruption. But you look at the items there: rice, yamwadia, all of them there, guts, bladders, and stomachs of animals, poultry, animals and vegetable oil, margarine, fruit juices, soft drinks, mineral water, corrugated paper and paper boards, mosquito coils and insecticides, soaps and detergents, motor cars, iron and steel, diapers, polymers, that is plastics and plastic products, fish, biscuits, canned tomatoes, ceramic tiles, clothing and apparel, noodles and pasta, sugar, and more. What picture does that paint in terms of our readiness to even deal with this situation? Dr. Cowell, that one is for you.
It is a gloomy picture when you look at it. That bill was dead on arrival. Why am I saying that?
You're saying the LI was dead on arrival.
Dead on arrival. And before it was even sent to Parliament, no much work was done on it. No thorough engagement was done on it. If we had good engagement, you and I will be aware of stakeholder consultation with all the persons who are involved in the importation or the growing of those things that we have in the country. We would have had a consensus before that is sent to the Parliament for decisions to be made on it. We just stand up, we want to appropriate strong powers to certain ministers or agencies when those things, the processes that they use in importing them already exist. So if we live in a country, excuse me to say, where almost everything has been politicized. So the minister may come in and say, I don't like you, and so because of this and this, you will not be able to import that. The minister may start imposing minimum capital requirement for people who want to bring it. Indirectly, you are making it difficult for these people to import the things that you want to bring in, so that those who will be able to satisfy you will be the ones who will get some of these things. We do not have enough policy in our country. There is sugar on the list. How many tons of sugar do we produce in our country, Ghana? Then we have a lot of rivers flowing in our country. What is the policy of making sure that we produce enough fish in our rivers? But we've left the rivers for galamsey operators to pollute. Our sea, as we speak, is being taken over by the Chinese trawlers, who will sweep almost everything that we have. Of course, some of these people are fronted by Ghanaians when they are going into this. It is high time we try to put our country, Ghana, first when it comes to some of these things. If we continue to go the way we are going, where we don't have a policy, and we stand up to do certain things, the talk show is not enough. We need action. Serious actions.
Serious actions like what? Serious action like what?
Actions like making sure that you reduce import duties so that prices on the market will be enough for us to buy. There are some taxes that the importers pay at the ports, something like port charges and the rest. They are not necessary. We can go ahead and put a specific exchange rate at the port, that for the period of 6 months, this is the rate at which we are taking. No rate changing almost every day. When you do that, the business person will be able to plan, and they will know the prices they are going to charge on the market. the ordinary Ghanaian will be able to plan and know how much I'm going to buy the items on the market. At that point in time, after that, when they want to go and buy things, they can then use the real exchange rate on the market. In that way, you are cushioning them over time. This current government had done this thing when we faced some challenges before. Why is it that they've turned their back on it? Is it that it was not able to work? When you bring some tax incentives for locally manufactured products in the country, you don't just announce it. You must make sure that those tax incentives reflect on the prices of the items that we find on the market. For the oil marketing companies for some time now, the world market of crude had reduced. They were supposed to reduce the pump price. They have not done it, attributing it to other factors as exchange rates and all those things. Have we sat with them to know what goes into the pricing of these items that they bring into the country? Then we need to have a lot of work. Let us bring technocrats on board. It shouldn't be because I am not a member of the ruling party, and for that matter, I cannot contribute. Everybody that have the expertise, that we know that these people are good, let's bring them on board. Okay. In terms of production, I'm told that the one who engineered the techniques and then the idea of Nigeria producing more rice is a Ghanaian.
Yes, so I've heard. Right.
On your station the last time. Why are we not using this gentleman? Is it a case that he does not belong to us or does not hold a party political card? And for that matter, let it go. I know Ghanaians around the world that are doing things and they are turning other economies around. Why don't we go and bring all these people to help build our own country?
All right. Thank you, Dr. Kawa, for sharing these thoughts with us. And I also hear that today is your birthday, and on behalf of our team here, we wish you a very happy birthday. May God keep blessing you and uplifting you. So happy birthday to you, sir, as you take leave of us. We are very grateful for your time this morning.
Thank you very much, my brother.
All right. And that is Dr. Sairam Kawa. He's a senior lecturer at the UCC School of Business. I'll wrap with you, Raphael. You have the final word. So where do we go from here? The problems are many. It's a hydra-headed economic headwind we're getting into. What do you see to be the way forward?
So, Ben, one of the key drivers of the surge in the exchange rate is our over-reliance on imports. So this issue of restricting certain imports or certain items was in the right direction to ensure that we are an industrialized country. And once we project and advance the cost of industrialization, our reliance on importations and thereby foreign exchange would be minimal. Yes, so that was the intent of the Minister and Parliament at the Cabinet, which the commendation. But of course, as we all alluded to the fact, there are certain components of it that need to be looked at. We don't have the data that says that we can produce this quantum of goods or services sufficient enough to support the country even when we ban these items. And also, for me, I have a personal reservation that says that you don't leave the approval process entirely to the minister. I think that the minister has a lot of things to do, so I think that the approval process should be to involve more stakeholders. And I also think that other stakeholders like the GUTA has to be brought on board fully on these issues of restriction. At the end of the day, the law is going to pass for people. And if the people who are meant to benefit or to suffer from the law are not in support of it, then we really haven't done much. So for me, we need to do a stakeholder consultation. We need to involve all those other matters. And we also need to be sure that the approval process is very fair and transparent so that everyone will be satisfied with the outcomes of the approval. That being said, one takeaway from the budget was also for the fact that the government is investing in food. So when we are able to do the roads, obviously these issues of items such as rice and whatever we need to produce locally would be able to be transported to diverse destinations in the country. And there's an area in my called Sonia. Sonia Road is a very flat area, but this is one of the areas where we produce farm produce. So that road, when it's done, is going to support the easy transportation of produce from that side in Bolivamboy. And again, one other place called Akrupe, this is a mine with a very poor road network. So apart from the mining, they have farming and then cashew farming as well. So when we are able to sort out these problems, we need to first address the basic concerns, roads, infrastructure, then we can be able to then restrict these items. I'm sure we do that. I mean, we'll get the buy-in on everybody. So let's.
And that precisely has been the stance of CSOs of the minority talking on this issue, that it's not a bad thing to look for substitutes or to gradually phase out certain imports and produce locally. But the question is, you can't just do it abruptly when you don't even have capacity. I've already shared the capacity of rice production, poultry production, sugar. We don't even have, an industry here. So if you put them on the list, the question is, how are you going to ramp up production? And by the way, if you look at even Nigeria, it's taken them 12 years between 2010 and 2022 to just double their production. I'm talking of double, not meet all the production. Double their production from 2.8 million metric tons in 2010 to 5.3 million metric tons in 2022. They've not even doubled it yet because they would need an extra about 450,000 or 650,000 metric tons. So it tells you of what lies ahead of us, and if we're going to do this, what work it will actually take, and what we should have done before we even get to this point. But Raphael, we're going to have to end the conversation here. I'm grateful that you took the time to join the conversation this morning.
Thank you very much, Dan. I appreciate your time.
All right. Raphael Kuma is the MPP's parliamentary candidate-elect in Bolivamboy. Earlier you heard Dr. Seiram Kawo, who is a senior lecturer at the UCC School of Business. Well, stay with us. There's a lot more to discuss on the show. We'll be coming your way in the next few minutes.